So, racism in pageants actually started from long time ago, during the time when there is an actual segregation between blacks and white. And I'm going to talk about that with each and every continent and how their standard is. But I remember I've been seeing articles from before where even in South Africa, the girl who's representing South Africa at Miss World, so there's Africa South, where African or black South Africans actually represent that name or title, and the South Africa that represents for Miss World was actually European or Caucasian descent. So that's how it all started. And even in the United States, where that's how Miss Black America or Miss Black US, there's different pageants that were for African American women. And it all started because of the segregation. So I'm going to talk to you with each country, and hopefully you will be able to understand. And please do not attack me, because this is just from my own research and also my opinion. So hopefully please don't get offended. Thank you. So let's talk about first the big continents when it comes to pageants. So I'll start off with Asia. So Asia, it was basically all from the standard of what country it's held or how they do their pageants nationally. So I'm going to talk about the Philippines. So in previous years, especially in the 70s and in the 80s, 90s as well, Philippines carries out a standard in pageants that a girl must be tall, she has to be a certain height, and she has to be mestiza, so lighter skinned. And why did they ever have that mentality? It's because of the fact that it's also part of the social standing. So in the Philippines, and please again, all the Filipino pageant fans, do not hate me, but it's the reality. When you are lighter skinned, you are first considered to be of a higher status. So like what they call aristocrata or an ascendera. So you have a better breed because you're coming from a Spanish background. So if you are actually a mestiza, you're fared more in pageants. And a number one example for that is actually Margie Moran, who won Miss Universe in 1973. So, and then when Miss Universe was held in 1974, a lot of the Filipino fans actually liked a lot of the girls who are tall and blonde haired. So I remember they actually were a fan of girls who have blue eyes. So Miss Spain, which is Amparo Munoz, who won Miss Universe in 1974, as well as Miss Australia, of course Miss United States or Miss USA. They were the big fans. And then when Miss Universe was held in 1994, they love Miss Belgium and also Miss Switzerland, and then Miss Australia, who is actually Michelle Van Imeren, who was Ogie Alcacid's ex-wife. They actually met at Miss Universe. That's how their love story happened. But she was one of the blonde girls that Filipino pageants were going crazy about. But they also love the Latin girl from Venezuela, Minorca Mercado, because she was so tall. I mean, she's like almost 6'1", and a professional volleyball player. And she just has that stature. Filipino pageant fans love girls who are really tall. Tall and a nice physique, like model-esque. And if they are lighter skinned, they love it. Now, when it comes to Filipino national pageants, that was the standard that they choose their girls back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So, but when it started in 2000, things has changed when it comes to selecting their national queens. I guess because Filipinos are starting to see everything from how the world prefers actually Filipino girls that who are tanned, especially in Europe, you know, and or morena, what they call morena. So not mestiza, or not like lightly skinned, but morena. And the first person that Binibini crowned for Miss Universe that actually had that morena look, but because she's also of a mixed breed, she's half East Indian and half Filipina, was Venus Raw. And she was dark skinned but very tall. Filipino pageant fans love tall girls. So Venus Raw was so tall, dark skinned, but very nice skin tone and spotless. There's no we don't see any like skin blemishes or anything like that. And then I remember I saw the clips when she competed at Miss Philippines Earth first, and she became a runner-up. And there was also people bashing her because of the fact that, oh, how could they crown her? She's not that pretty and everything. But when she competed for Miss Binibini Pilipinas, she was there to win the crown. The transformation from her time at Miss Philippines Earth to Binibini Pilipinas was actually very different. She became more stronger. And when she competed at Miss Universe, she brought back the Philippines in the pageant map in the Miss Universe, where she placed 4th runner-up because of her stature, and also her height and her model-esque figure. So, and then you would see that how Janine Tagonon, who was Miss Philippines Universe, also competed, and she was first runner-up. She was actually more oriental skin, but she was not light complexion, but she was also still morena. So the morenas are actually starting to have good placements at Binibini Pilipinas, crowning for Miss Universe Philippines. And then you have Shamsi also as well, who not very European, but she still has the morena factor. And then then all of a sudden we had Pia Wurtzbach, who's very Caucasian looking because she's half German, and she did well and won Miss Universe in 2015. And then Catriona Gray, who's half Australian and half Filipina. So her father was Caucasian and her mother was Filipina, and she won Miss Universe in 2018. But now you could see that there's diversity for for Filipino pageants where they choose girls, not just only in the type of skin tone, but now they're open to different kinds of tones. And I see that for Miss Universe Philippines, April Smith, who's actually has an African Asian descent to her. And then another girl, Miss Biliran, Universe. Actually, she's also half-breed. And then when you go to Binibining Pilipinas, there's still a lot of girls who are actually morenas and also dark-skinned and also fair-skinned. So now the pageantry has improved when it comes to skin color, and also the factor of they still love tall girls. And unfortunately, Filipino pageants are not ready for petite women winning crowns. And I'm hoping that one time they will crown a Miss Philippines Petite so they can send to their petite pageants, because 85% of Filipinos are actually petite. And I know that because in my family, I'm the tallest one among everyone in my siblings. And most of my siblings are 5 foot, 5'2", 5'3", and me being 5'7", I was the tallest, and I'm even taller than my brother. So, just to let everybody know, most of the Filipino people are actually petite. And now let's talk about other parts of Asia. So, Thailand people, or Thailanders, they actually just started being a powerhouse lately. But before, they always prefer the more oriental look. They have to have the oriental look, and again, light-skinned and tall. I think in every Asian aspect, they like tall girls. But with nowadays, I could see that a lot of the girls that are being crowned for Thailand to represent Miss Universe are starting to look like a Latina or European. And not because of the fact that they have a European background with them, but because they are actually doing a lot of facial surgeries, fixing the nose, fixing the eyelids, putting more cheekbones and sharp jawline. So that's what Thailand beauty queens are all about. When it comes to China and Hong Kong and Taiwan, actually when Miss Universe first started having Miss China was in 2001, and I noticed that after that, I've never seen any placement of China being in Miss Universe. So, but at Miss World, they have 2 Chinese representatives who won Miss World. But again, they're 2 different pageants. So, and I think that Chinese people are very, they have that innocent look, and which, and very more of like the princess kind of looking, which Miss World prefers that kind of look, and Miss Universe prefers more of like that bold girl, someone who just has that presence and stand out in a room. You know, you can notice her from afar. And I think that there's need more work in the Chinese pageants to actually, for them to get caught on, because you know, they have nice skin tone and flawless skin as well, but they're still in the newbie stage when it comes to pageantry, I think. But a lot of pageants are being hosted in China, so obviously, and they're also a great host, I think. So they should learn and see how to modernize their contestants, and making it look more compatible for international pageants. Japan, from what I see, it's also the same. It varies in every year, and but they had a biracial Miss Universe Japan, who did well in Miss Universe. I think it was 4 years ago. So hopefully it will be like that in the continent of Asia. So Malaysia, again, I've noticed that they're more typical even when they're hosting pageants. It's always Asian girls winning. So they look for that typical Asian look, and the girl in who's representing Malaysia always have that Asian breed or Chinese Oriental breed, not more of Malay. I don't know where because of religion purposes, because most of the people in Malaysia are actually Muslims. Then you have the Indians, and then Chinese. And same thing with Indonesia and Singapore. So Vietnam is doing so well now in pageants. I love the way they style their queens, and that all started when Miss Vietnam from Catriona year, short-haired girl, nice look. She has a presence, and even last year's Miss Vietnam, I see that they're very competitive as well. So they're catching on in the pageant field. So that's what for Asia continent. Let's talk about the Caribbean group. So the Caribbean continent, well, they're part of Americas usually, but in Miss World, they actually have the Caribbean, and some other pageants also have the Caribbean region. So I guess because of the fact that the Americas is so big, that they need to give opportunity for that. And I hope, and I'm glad that they actually do that, because it gives more opportunities. So I can tell you that in the Caribbean, it depends on which country there is, what they pick. So Jamaican girls, I love the girls that they pick from Miss Jamaica, because Black Beauty, the one who won Miss Jamaica and who won Miss World, I love the fact that she has the Black Beauty in her, but she's also mixed with Indian. So I could see that's why they do so well in pageants as well, because they have a lot of mixes in them. Indian, African, and Caucasian. So, and they really train their queens very well. And the fact that Jamaican queens, I find them so natural. I don't see any facial enhancement or even physical enhancement with them. So, most of them really do well at Miss World. I know that. And at Miss Universe as well, they have placements recently. And I think that Jamaican beauty queens are just beautiful because they're so natural. Now let's talk about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I consider them a Latin pageant powerhouse island, because they're still under the United States and they're a territory of the United States, but they have their separate representations in the international pageant, which they are considered a country. So Puerto Rico is also a pageant powerhouse, and the way they style their queens are so beautiful. But mostly Puerto Ricans, they look for a girl who's light skinned, and I have nothing against dark-skinned Puerto Ricans, because they're so beautiful. I've seen them compete, but mostly when I see Miss Puerto Rico at Miss Universe, Miss World, especially like I know for a fact I've seen Diana Torres personally at Miss Universe in 1994. I was young when it was held in the Philippines. And she was so beautiful, light skin, porcelain complexion, skin is flawless. And even though she's not tall, she has beautiful eyes and a nice stature. So I find that Puerto Ricans they always have a girl that they send to international pageants that are the exotic European Caucasian look. And even this year, even though the girl who represented Puerto Rico for 2019 Miss Universe, she's blonde hair, even though she is originally from New York, I believe, but she's of Puerto Rican descent. And again, I noticed that a lot of Puerto Ricans, they prefer Puerto Rican pageants, they prefer crowning a lot of that European looking Puerto Rican, like a typical Latina girl. And if they ever sent somebody to represent Puerto Rico that is dark skinned, I haven't seen one lately, but I've seen a few back in 2000, in the early 2000, and they do well, but not as much as the fair-skinned Puerto Ricans. So that's where Puerto Rico is all about. And Dominican Republic, it's the same thing. A lot of Dominicanos or Dominicanas, I find that they pick girls that represent Dominican Republic who are also fair-skinned or light-skinned Dominicanas. But you could see the African background with them because their hair, some of them have that actual African hair, but they're light-skinned. So that's the only difference between Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. But they're so beautiful because they have that wonderful mix of African descent to them. Like, I mean, nicely curvy. Well, that's what I noticed with the Dominicans. Curvy girls represent Dominican Republic. And if they're really, really tall, like Amelia Vega, because she's model-esque. So that's my opinion with the Dominican Republic girls. Haitians are actually picking up the pageant style. I've seen a lot of Haitian girls competing in international pageants who are actually tall, and they like to sport their natural curly hair. I've noticed that, and I find it so beautiful when they do that. And I know because my title holder, some of our title holders are actually Haitians. First is Meji Mezaluz, who was Miss Canada Globe runner-up, and then she became Miss Black Beauty International. She was from Haiti. And also Jessica Zephyr, our Miss Canada Globe 2014. She's actually from Quebec, but she's from Haiti. Her family's from Haiti. So I find them very nice height, nice dark porcelain skin. So those are what Haitians are from you. And then you have Trinidad and Tobago, where I find them really good mixture, because a lot of the girls, it's either you get an Indian, West Indian look, which is the like who has an East Indian heritage, or you have the African Caribbean look. So, and they do well in pageants. So Wendy Fitzwilliam, who won Miss Universe, I'm a big fan of her. So, and then other Caribbean countries such as Aruba, they go by season. But in teen pageants, they excel very well. So, and again, Arubans are very multicultural when it comes to picking their queens. You have 1 year that they have light-skinned European Caucasian background Aruban, and then the following year or so you would have a dark-skinned African Caribbean Aruban descent. And same thing with Curacao. But Curacao, I've noticed that most of the girls that are actually going have that African Caribbean descent that represents Curacao. And they're so beautiful. I love the way how they look on stage, because again, they have that dark porcelain skin. And if they're actually mulatto, they look also beautiful, because you have their some of them have green eyes or hazel eyes. So that's what Curacao is. So when it comes to Caribbean, that's my opinion on their queens. And we'll talk about the next continent. So I'm going to talk about the European continent, because that's so important. Remember that Miss World came from England, and it's the longest running pageant in the world. And that's how pageants started in Europe. It's the international pageant crazes from London, England. And I noticed that in London, England, in the past, where I see where they have their representatives, we see that a lot of the girls that they crown actually, from back even when it started up to 90s, were all Caucasian looking. We haven't seen any Miss England or Miss UK that is actually African European or African British descent, except for other pageants like Miss Globe. I know that because from the Miss Globe we had girls who represented England or United Kingdom that are actually of African descent. But in the 2000, we had seen a girl that represented England at Miss World who have an Indian background, and also we had a girl who was mixed of African and European or Caucasian. So that's what I see when it comes to England. But in Ireland, most of the queens that they crown are actually so multicultural. I've seen a lot of mixed races that represents Ireland at Miss World, at Miss Universe, and I've seen how they're more open to different races as well from the past years. So even at Mr. World, I mean, I've seen a lot of like mixed representatives. So that's Ireland. And Northern Ireland, same thing. The representatives at Northern Ireland mostly are Caucasian. But recently, even at Mr. World, the one who won from Mr. World was from Northern Ireland, was actually mixed raced. So Wales, I remember Wales is also open to come for having different nationalities who represents who represents different backgrounds. And I know that for a fact because in 1974 the lady that represented Wales was actually a mixed race. So I see that they had a lot of mixed races that represented Wales when it comes to that. And now let's talk about the other parts of Europe. So Southern European, let's start about the Southern European countries. So Italy, most of the girls that they actually crown, I remember, that represents Italy at Miss Universe and at Miss World, are actually Caucasian or light-skinned. Southern Europe, but a lot of the girls that represents the European countries are mostly from the northern Italian region. I guess because of the fact that they are tall and they have more lighter complexion and light. I guess because even of the hair, more volume, more stylish, I guess, when it comes to that. And the Southern Europeans are more short and they're darker skinned. But in the year 2000, a lot of things changed. We've seen more Mediterranean looking girls that represent Italy. So that I'm very happy to hear about that, because of the fact that like my dad was actually from Italy, but from Calabria, and I could tell when it comes to Southern European background or Southern Italian background, they still need more girls. They still need more choices to choose Southern European girls. And hopefully, because of the change and the modernization of pageants, that they pick a lot of Southern European girls because they're so pretty. They're very dark skinned and really tanned. They have that nice olive complexion and nice bone structure. If you've seen it, they have nice nose, cheek wise, and the lips. And I'm a big fan of Sophia Loren. So Southern Italian girls. So let's talk about Greece. We notice about when it comes to Greek queens from the past until now, there's not a lot of change. I noticed that in Greece, most of the girls that represent Greece, they look for skinny model-esque girls. And the only one that I find different was the girl that represented Greece in 1994 at Miss Universe, because she had curly hair. But mostly a lot of the girls that they pick are actually like really Caucasian tall girl that has a model-esque figure. But I just wanted to let you know, I forgot to actually make this a point. In Italy, they had crowned one girl that has an African Italian background, and she actually was her background was Somalia. And as you know, a part of Somalia was actually a territory and was colonized by Italy back in the days, and so that's why a lot of Somalians do talk Italian. So just to let you know. Then we'll talk about the Albanians. So Albanians are like Southern Italians. If they got a tall girl, it's not too tall, but they have a nice complexion, nice eye figure, and they could be model-esque or they could be curvy. So that's what Albanian girls are. And so far the Albanians are actually, there's 2 Albanians that were crowned the Miss Globe, but in other international pageants they haven't really excelled much. But lately, I believe even from last year's Miss Universe, she was a standout, that girl that represents Albanian. But she was very let me say that, very scandalous. That's what I can say. But Albanians that compete at Miss Globe, they do so well because of the fact that, not because the owner of the Miss Globe is Albanian, they're very disciplined. When they are actually competing, they are in focus to actually represent Albania the best way they could to their fellow contestants. Because as much as we know, Albanians, the Miss Globe was held a lot of times in Albania, and therefore not a lot of times that an Albanian girl would go, or the Miss Globe would have been held outside of Albania, except from last year, which was held in Montenegro, but it was close to Albania. And then in 2015, when Canada hosted the Miss Globe, and the girl that represented that was actually Albanian British girl. So that's what my opinions about Albanian girls in and Albanian queens. Okay, and then we have France, and with France, because they are in border of being northern and also southern regions, there's a lot of culture when it comes to picking their queens. And I've noticed that because they have a lot of territories such as Guadeloupe and Haiti and a lot of Caribbean territories that they had where they speak French, they actually invite them. And also Pacific islands like I forgot, Tahiti and Fiji. They're actually with French background, and they invite them to compete at Miss France. So if you notice, a lot of Miss France winners have an African French descent to them, and I like that. I like that because of the fact that it shows a lot of multiculturalism. So that's my opinion with French girls. And now let's go to the Northern European representation. So Iceland, I'm going to talk about first, because Iceland, they always choose Nordic girls, but last year's Miss Universe, they had an African European descent girl, and she's so beautiful. I love her, and I think that she would have made a perfect Miss Universe as well. And then Belgium, they've crowned a lot of girls as well that are multiracial. And last year's Miss Belgium was actually Filipina descent, and they're very multicultural. And I consider also Denmark the same way, where they had a girl who represented in Denmark who was Filipino descent, and they had one year that Denmark was represented by an Indian descent. So now Sweden, very Nordic, and as well as Norway, but they had two girls that represented Norway. One was actually Filipina background as well, and the other one was actually European African descent. Same thing with Germany. Germany, I find their girls very exotic, because a lot of the girls that represented Germany at Miss Universe, at the Miss Globe, and I can tell you that for a fact because the Miss Globe representatives, sometimes they're mixed with Persian background, they're mixed with African background, and they're even mixed with sometimes with Chinese background. And the girl that represented Germany at the Miss Globe this year was actually half Latina background. Her mother was Cuban and her dad was German. So isn't that so cool that they have a lot of ethnicities and a lot of mixed cultures? So That's what my opinion now on the European continent.